What have been the worst situations you have dealt with while living alone? I was living in a house where my bedroom was right near the front door / porch area. I was up late one night just watching Netflix in bed or something, and I started hearing footsteps on my front porch. Someone walking around out there for a while, and then my power was cut. I was internally freaking out while trying to stay quiet, and eventually I heard them walk away. Luckily my mum and her partner lived really close to me, so I gave them a call and they helped me check the place out and turn the power back on. Never happened again, but it did make me a bit paranoid for a while. That would be a tie between the time the building's heater broke in November in a cold snowy city and they couldn't get it fixed for almost a month, and the biggest cockroach I have ever seen. Now, I know what you're thinking. Whatever, it's just a cockroach. But I had been living in non-glamorous parts of Brooklyn for a while. I was familiar with several subspecies of cockroach. The thing I saw when I came out of the shower and walked into my bedroom was more like a cephalopod from the Jurassic era. It was at least the size of my fist. Caveman fight or flight kicked in. I was instantly traumatized, but I also knew I would never be able to sleep if I let it get away. So, ass naked, I grabbed a sneaker and killed it in one strike. The crunch. Not long afterward, I poured a normal-sized cockroach from my cereal box into my bowl. I didn't eat cereal again until I left New York. I was stalked by a former neighbor. I was stalked by a guy I dated for like 2 months. I dumped him because he had creepy anger issues. He knew what apartment complex I lived in but not what building or apartment. So at least he didn't get too close. But he did tell me a few times that he was in the parking lot looking for me. Eventually he got bored and gave up. But it was a real scary week. Second worst was probably the summer when it rained very heavily and my air conditioner kept breaking and my roof kept leaking in different spots, so I had to keep moving my bed around. 3 AM a hot water pipe in the apartment above me broke. Collapsed the whole ceiling in my kitchen. 3 AM. So none was awake for me to reach out to. Places was flooding. Landlord was not answering. The homeless man who wandered into my apartment. I was renting from a real slumlord and the lock didn't always latch right. One night I was home alone, eating in my kitchen, when I felt a presence. Yep. Dirty, disheveled man asking for my downstairs neighbors who were known coke dealers. I told him he was in the wrong place, and before he left, he asked if I needed a good man. I lied and said my very jealous boyfriend would be home soon. Then he left. It could have ended so much worse. Someone stole all 4 tires off my car while it was parked in the alley behind my apartment. I had to deal with fuse boxes going out and trying to figure out how to reset them. I once came home and found my sexy panties on my doormat. 100% convinced the maintenance man did it. Maintenance worker started harassing me after knowing exactly where I live and having fixed the lock on my door of all things. He was fired, but left a note on my door and tried to reach out over social media. Apartment complex won't let me move without hefty charges, despite him being their employee. Luckily I have a large and scary dog. I was in the laundry room alone once and the worker came in, and I've never had a worse gut feeling to get the duck out of a place. I did get out, but he'd always try to find me when I was in areas alone. Spiders. First apartment, terribly inconsiderate upstairs neighbor who had an unbelievable libido. At least 4 to 5 afternoons/evenings a week he'd bring a hookup and do the deed in less than 10 minutes with obnoxiously loud music playing to cover the sounds. He finally moved out after several letters the management office. Second, and thankfully final, apartment, terribly inconsiderate upstairs neighbor who alternated between hooking up and having knockout fights with her lover, who I never saw. Also had to contend with a sinister roach problem. This was the motivation I needed to buy a townhouse and I haven't looked back. Domestic violence. My ex brutally beat me and choked me/attempted to strangle me during a fight. I was rescued by a roommate after screaming for my life. My house was broken into while I was home. scared the absolute shit out of me. It was an ex, which makes it a million times worse to me. I'm just now getting over the anxiety that caused, and it was almost 6 months ago. My male landlords have tried / have walked into my apartment without my permission. Once when I was showering. Another had a full-blown crush on me. My landlord now is a woman and doesn't bother me ever. We've actually never even met. TW. I was suicidal due to being unhappy and depressed about some people and how they treated me, but was staying alone in a studio flat. Parents lived in a different continent and I wasn't able to open up to them. Dear God. Slumped down in the bathroom with a knife was probably one of the lowest points in my life. Literally was breathless from continuous crying, and I remember waking up several hours later still in the bathroom. Not having anyone to comfort me or listen to my problems was terrible, and I really hope no one ever finds themselves in that place. I had a bat in my house. It was kind of funny. A open window and a broom and he left. I've lived alone for years, so I've learned to deal with stuff breaking and emergencies. Bowel impaction. I thought I was dying and was so scared. I also had a stalker. My new, used car got vandalized, caused about $7K worth of damage to the paint and tires. After that I found the money to afford a super shitty garage stall. Other than that, having to get my shower water pressure adjusted and the kitchen sink backing up every few months. It's not so bad. I'm very fortunate where I live was safe and well maintained. But one day I really hated the fact I was living alone was when I had to battle 2 flying cockroaches alone. Some guy knocking on my door for like 5 or 10 minutes at 11 PM at night. It was winter, so he had a hood on, and I didn't recognize him. Turns out it was my neighbor bringing a package for me that was delivered to his place on accident. Freaked me out. I set up security cameras after that. Being stalked by an ex-boyfriend who would just show up at random places, gas station, grocery store, etc., or leave messages raging about seeing me out with other people when I hadn't seen him. This was in a big city and he didn't live near me. The plumber saying things that made me uncomfortable when he was alone with me in my apartment. Also, living alone for 6 months without ever realizing that my living room sliding glass doors that I never used had been unlocked the whole time. I only found out because I accidentally locked myself out and was looking for a way in. I was both so relieved and so horrified when I was able to walk right in. Not being able to open that one lid, had to tear it apart from above with a sharp item in the end. Lol. I lived on a city block on top of commercial properties. The corner unit was a coffee shop that I went to way too much. I would sometimes get real dressed, but other times I would be in some state between pajamas and workout wear. I was sitting outside the coffee shop half dressed finishing a smoke before going into order and a guy came and sat on the bench next to me. He was hitting on me and I wasn't interested. I put the cig out and went inside. He followed me. I tried to disappear into the crowd. He followed me. I got my coffee and when they called his name I booked it. Of course he followed me. I went out the back door and down the alley. He followed me about halfway down the alley. I didn't go to my own apartment right away, just kept walking. Eventually I circled back home, but was still too scared to go home. So I went to my male neighbors across the hall and he sat with me till I calmed down. I'm sure he didn't have bad intentions, but damn dude, it scared the shit out of me. Living in a city you get all sorts of interesting characters, but that was one of my absolute least favorite. My ex stalked me around campus for weeks after I broke up with him. One night I got home around 3 AM and noticed some things looked different in my room, but went to sleep. The next morning I woke up and realized my window was broken into. Some photos on my wall were missing. The table next to my window was moved and my fan that was in front of the window was moved out of the way. I called the cops, who came to look around but found nothing. After they left, there was a knock on my door and I went to open it until I realized his car was outside. I panicked and stood so still. He finally left and then the cops showed up to arrest him. In the end, my landlord came to install a wooden board so my window would stay closed because the lock was broken. My neighbor jumping my fence and finding him at my sliding glass door, and then again at 10 PM at night at my front door. The worst situation probably was the time that my car got broken into. Dealing with the aftermath was a hadash. I still believe to this day that it was someone I knew, just because of how/when it happened. I let a couch surfer stay next door, and he turned out to be a woman-hating, borderline crazy, sex-craving psycho, and I think it sort of traumatized me. I wasn't able to sleep properly without flatmates since. Locked myself out of my apartment. It also happened to be the same day that I got into a car crash. My toilet exploded my first night in a new apartment. Water was gushing out of the toilet tank with such force, it knocked the lid off. I woke up because the candle I had placed on top, candle in glass, shattered and woke me. Fallout with my parents. I'm an only child. Completely heartbroken about a situation with a guy. Feeling deaf and blind at the same time, and stuck at home 24/7 due to COVID. Pretty much sums up my current situation. Electric tea went out. Rat in the closet and an empty floor with dead silence. Plumbing issue. There was a clog in the main line. I was running the washing machine when the washing machine was draining. The water had nowhere to go due to the clog, so it started coming up through the toilets, showers, and bathtubs. Luckily, I turned the washing machine off in time to stop any major water damage to my floors. Plumber's bill was a pretty penny though. Recovering from gallbladder surgery, my ex-husband dropped me off at my apartment. See the pile of dog vomit on the carpet and left. My dog was feeling sick. I felt terrible, but I had to get things done. Taking her outside to go potty was rough. Trying to climb into my tasked bed. Taking a shower. Trying to eat. All of it. If something went wrong, nobody would have known. I did end up having to go to the ER on the 5th day, as my abdomen had filled up with fluid and my liver was not happy at all without its sidekick. That was a difficult drive to the hospital. I just wanted someone to kiss my forehead and help me climb into bed. My fire alarm went off all night. Once lol, that was fun. I tried everything, new battery, reset, blah blah blah. Eventually I just disconnected it and hoped I wouldn't burn alive in my sleep. Spirits moved in with me. Please click subscribe if you enjoyed this video.